let's talk about the general form of an absolute value function. So the general form of an absolute value function is f of x equal to a times x minus h plus k. Now, as you know, the parent function of an absolute value is f of x equal to absolute value of x, but the a, h, and k, of course, will transform our parent function to a new child function. So let's go over what a, h, and k represents. So starting with a firstly represents our reflection about the x-axis, and this will occur if a is less than 0 or negative. So let's say you now have f of x equal to negative absolute value of x. That will represent a reflection about the x-axis, which will turn into basically an upside down v. Now, a also represents our vertical stretch and compression. So ignoring the sign of a and actually looking at the value itself, if the absolute value of a is between 0 and 1, that will represent a vertical compression by a factor of whatever the absolute value of a is. For instance, if you have f of x equal to 1/2 times the absolute value of x, this would be a vertical compression by 1/2. And typically this will be more of a wider v if it is between 0 and 1. Now, if the absolute value of a is greater than 1, then this will represent a vertical stretch by a factor of whatever the absolute value of a is. For instance, if you have 2 times the absolute value of x, this will represent a vertical stretch by a factor of 2. And typically, if it is greater than 1, our v will become more narrow. Now moving on to h. H represents our horizontal shift, left or right. Now it's important not to get confused with the signs. For instance, if you had the absolute value of x minus 2, this is actually a horizontal shift right by 2, okay? So it's always going to be the opposite of what you think. So if you have the absolute value of x plus 2, then this will be a horizontal shift left 2. Okay, and lastly we have our k. K represents our vertical shift up or down, and luckily k is not deceiving like our horizontal shift. So if you had the absolute value of x plus 2, this will translate to a vertical shift up by 2, and if you had absolute value of x minus 2, this would be a vertical shift down 2. And those are all the transformations.